Hello, everyone, and welcome to this list reveal for the Southern Grand Tournament. I am Brad, the host, Merchant Prince by Gamer Tag Nature, and today we're not only going to be talking lists, but we're also going to be talking Season 7. Without further ado, I'll introduce the special guest for this evening, Joe McCarthy. Welcome, Joe.
Hello, everyone. Thank you, Brad. Thank you for having me.
How are you doing? Everything all right?
Yeah, very well. Thank you. Very excited for the tournament this weekend. I'm defending my title.
Yes, the champion from last year.
Yeah.
And also, we've got another special guest. I managed to get Tom Lenton on the line as well. Good evening, Tom. Can you hear us in Plymouth?
I can, yeah. Hi, Brad. Thanks for having me. Also excited for the tournament this weekend. Yeah, 100%.
Perfect. Right, okay. So, if we are all ready, one thing I will get into first off is the venue. We're going to be playing it this year at the Hamworthy Club. Directions and stuff are on the stats website, but here's a kind of a picture of both of the inside where the bar is and the outside. There's lots of parking. Hopefully it'll have as blue skies tomorrow as it's got in the picture. And the room actually that we've got, if you look at the bar photo, if you look straight in the middle, right down at the bottom, that'll be the room that we are in. But if anyone has any problems, obviously you can go to that reception, or even ask somebody if you get a bit lost. But it's pretty easy to find, to be quite honest with you. We've got food both days. Lunch on day one is sandwiches, which at the moment I'm currently waiting on Chris Tamplin and somebody else, I can't remember the name, to give me a lunch order. But if you don't get it in before, like say this evening, I can ask you tomorrow. It's absolutely not a problem. But yeah, like we played Battle in the Bay down at the Hamworthy Club. Had a really good reception. And to be honest with you, like it was quite a nice day there. We had lunch on that day as well. I think it was a relatively successful tournament.
That's good. Any venue that has a bar is always a plus.
Yeah, especially after that loss that you really don't want.
Joe doesn't know about that because he didn't lose any games at the previous other GT.
Yeah, fair enough. But on day two, to be a bit different, we're actually having a roast dinner, which we'll find out about the meats on the day. But yeah, I think it will set everyone else up on nicely on day two, ready for travelling home and stuff. Don't have to worry about dinners, all the rest of it. You can grab your Mackies on the way home if you want. Lunches on both days is all set up and ready to go. So I suppose without further ado, should we look at the stats, guys?
Yeah. Brad, just quickly, I'm not sure whether the chat is enabled on the live stream. If it's something that's an easy button, we can say hello to anyone that's listening. Otherwise, if it's complicated, we'll just crack on.
Chats.
So while you investigate that, should we take a look at the lists?
Yeah, there doesn't seem to be a chat.
Never mind. We'll see everyone on the weekend. So that's not a problem.
So WhatsApp me your questions.
You're part of the WhatsApp. So here we go. Obviously, Saturday 25th, Sunday 26th is the dates of the tournament. If I go straight to the stats, what do you guys think of the viewing on the pie chart? The division of the factions. I mean, the only one we're really missing is Free Folk, which I was quite happy about, if I'm honest.
Good spread.
When I say I'm happy, I don't mean that I'm happy there's no Free Folk.
Yeah, I think perhaps the only surprise there is I was expecting more Boltons.
Yes.
Perhaps get into it a little bit when we look at the players that are coming, but considering their glow up, I think quite a lot of people probably have a Bolton starter set on the shelf, previously gathering dust. So yeah, that's perhaps my only big surprise, really.
Yes. Yeah. No. Absolutely, you're right there.
Yeah, definitely. I was also surprised by the absence of Boltons. But other than that, given the size of the event, it's quite a good mix. Almost everything else represented.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I mean, Stark's the most popular faction this time.
Yeah, yeah, good to see. I always think Lannisters and Starks are quite popular. So I guess it's maybe the two-player set back in the day. Don't know.
Yeah,
But
exactly. Yeah, the OG.
the OG.
Yeah, weirdly, I think Starks were the most popular at the last SGT as well, when we had 32 players. I think 20% of them were Starks then as well. So there's obviously something about the South Coast and Wolves. I don't know what.
Yeah, yeah. You think being Southern it'd be more Martell, but I suppose your heart love belongs where it belongs, right?
Longing for the North.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, looking at the kind of commander entries, considering that Stark is the biggest, I mean, when you look, you've got, two Eddards, two Roderick Cassells, quite interesting there. What else have we got?
The one
A
that's
Rob.
jumped out at me, actually, I think this is the first tournament I've ever been to where Khal Drogo hasn't been present.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, that's very true. I mean, I think there is only one Targaryen player as well. Yeah, which there is. Yeah, there is.
Good point.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
Jorah Mormont and Darian Naharis.
I mean, in fairness, half of those tournaments I brought Khal Drogo, so it's perhaps not totally surprising, but still.
You were that guy.
Yeah, I was that guy.
But yeah, I mean, once again, in terms of commanders, there's a pretty good spread, if I'm honest. Going to what I'll always go to, the Martells. I mean, you've got, probably Oberyn twice, yeah. But apart from that, it's individuals.
Yeah, it's nice, isn't it? I mean, it shows that it shows how good a position the game is in at the moment. That you
Yeah,
can play so many commanders and not feel bad about it.
yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, Baratheon wise, what we've got on Baratheons. I think they're all separates. Yep, they're all individual. You've got the Renly charismatic heir, Stannis, one true king, Andrew Estamont, first of the King's Men, and Axel Florent, first of the Queen's Men.
Yeah, I guess perhaps the only one that's and it's not surprising really, but both Greyjoy players bring Victarion. I guess there's
Yeah,
two Greyjoy players, two Victarians. But I mean, if you're playing Greyjoy, it's pretty hard to leave home without him, I think.
yeah. It's like you've got to have Balon in the back pocket, haven't you?
Yeah, there's plenty of Balon. I had a look through the Greyjoy lists. Yeah. We might
Yeah,
talk a bit more about that when we discuss season 7.
absolutely, absolutely. So if we look at the player list, if I click over to that now, one thing you'd made note of, Joe, which if you wouldn't mind leading, we have a bit of a breakdown on some of the player entries.
Yeah, so we thought we'd do it slightly differently and just take a quick look at who's coming and what they're bringing and what we can expect from them, and then we'll look at a couple of the lists in more detail. So straight off the bat, we've got the Ray brothers. I think every tournament I've been to, they've played a different faction. They're perhaps some of the best played or best broadest faction players that I've seen. And I think I must have played James maybe 5 or 6 times. I've never played Alex, so fingers crossed I'm going to get
Yeah,
Alex this time around.
I have been warned by James that I better not draw you two in the first round again.
But they were both at the last SGT. James came 8th.
Yes.
So you might be looking to improve on that. Alex came 22nd out of 32, so not quite as strong. But then Alex beat James at the LGT, so everything to play for with those two.
Yeah.
After the Ray brothers, we've got our previous second place SGT finalists: Lucas Eden, second at the SGT, second at the LGT.
Yeah.
Always the bridesmaid, never the bride. Perhaps we'll see
Yeah.
whether he can improve that this time round. Next up, we got I think a newcomer, David Walton. Not someone we saw at the SGT last time. Came 46th at the beg your pardon, came 26th at the LGT. Was playing Free Folk at the LGT. He's swapped to the Targaryen. playing a sort of non-meta Targaryen, lots of infantry. Be very interested to see how he gets on with that.
Yes.
Rob Grant, a familiar face to anyone that's played on the tournament scene in the last 12 months or so. Rob likes to say he always comes last, but I'm sure he's got some last places under his belt. But he beat me in a tournament in Bristol, fair and square. So he can certainly surprise you.
Yes. Yeah, and to be honest with you, Rob's always a great guy to have around. He always brings smiles to faces, whoever he plays.
Ben Ward next up, playing Greyjoy. Now, Ben's not a name I've seen before. I don't know if you know Ben at all, Brad, but I couldn't find that he's played any games at all on stats.
So
this may be a
this is Ben's first tournament. He's actually one of our newest wardens. We've had a couple of people join in quite recently. Ben started off life with the Martells, so you can imagine me and him got on very, very well. And then he ended up buying into. I think he's got Night's Watch as well, but he also got himself Greyjoys, which he's playing quite on the regular really. So yeah, it's an absolute pleasure to have him there. And yeah, hopefully he'll have a good tournament.
Yeah, excellent. Always good to see new players. Next up, Chris Tamplin. Chris didn't attend the SGT last year, as far as I could tell, although he did win the battle. Was it Battle in the Bay, the tournament?
So that one was the long night before Christmas.
Long night before Christmas. Thank you. Apologies. Yeah. So he is, I guess, currently the reigning Greater Bournemouth area champion.
Yes, I suppose you could say that. Yeah.
The long night before Christmas. He's switched to Bolton after the glow up. I played him twice. We're one win, one loss. He's going to hate me saying this, but I think Chris is a definite contender for winning this tournament. He came 11th at the LGT, 12th at the Welsh GT, but I definitely think he's got the capacity to top that and come in the top few places.
Absolutely.
Ranked 12th in the UK, pretty good. Next up, we've got Steve. So Steve has been down to Plymouth for the Ocean City Song of Ice and Fire tournament twice, 2 years in a row, and won 2 years in a row.
Yeah, he's the retaining champion.
He is the champion of the Far West, but he only came 18th last year at the FPT, which, to be fair, was mid-table.
Yeah.
But I definitely wouldn't write Steve off any tournament he's at. He can certainly pull it off.
Absolutely.
Next up, Tom Lenton. Tom Lenton, you sometimes see him at the top of the table. You sometimes see him at the bottom of the table. He's an enigma. You just never know where he's going to end up. He did come. You did come third last year, didn't you, Tom, at the Southern Grand Tournament? Although,
yes, I think that's right.
A slightly more challenging Welsh GT. I think you came third from the bottom.
Yeah.
Where are you going to end up this time?
Hey, best in faction though.
That's true.
There are a couple of other Lannisters, maybe.
I won best in faction at Welsh after.
Oh, sorry.
Oh my gosh, I lost almost every game, and somehow the Lannister player did even worse. So. Yeah.
Well, it's an experience to learn from.
But yeah, you played a lot of Martell over the 2025 season, haven't you, Tom? And you brought Lannisters to bear this year.
I know. It's almost a betrayal at this point. You took my niece and nephew and you wrapped them in Lannister cloaks.
No one simps harder for Martells than you, Brad.
So next up, we've got Sean Taylor. Sean played at the LGT. I don't think we saw him at the SGT last year. I guess he's coming down with the Microwave Express train from the Greater London area. I think those guys are. I'm not entirely sure, but good to see him here.
Yes.
Next up, we got George Blake. He's a regular on the tournament scene. You always see him with Lucas and David and the other Sherwood Brotherhood guys. George was here at the SGT last year, came 14th, very respectable out of 32.
Yep.
He came 17th at the LGT out of 53, 17th out of 26 at the Welsh GT. He plays Night's Watch. I don't think I've ever seen him play anything other than Night's Watch. So yeah, one to keep an eye on, I guess.
You will see him
Um,
playing something other than Night's Watch tomorrow, though, right? He's playing Starks.
Well, there we go. He's playing Stark. So
I mean,
yeah,
they're
we'll see how it
basically the
goes.
same, right? Angry men from just south of the wall.
Angry Northerners. Next up, we've got Pascal, one of the long time visible on the scene in the UK. Pascal's well known as being an absolute Renly simp, but at the Welsh GT, he switched to Starks and came 7th with 4 wins and 2 losses. He also came 7th at the SGT last year. Didn't lose a game. He won 3 and drew 1, which is pretty good going. But he was playing Baratheons back then. So I'm sure we'll see. Pascal, in contention this weekend.
Absolutely. I mean, I have seen him use Howland Reed before when I went up to a tournament in Chelmsford, which was run by UCATS. And yeah, Howland Reed's just one of those. He's got one of those kind of like Martelli feels. But I mean, we'll get to lists obviously in a minute.
Sam Crow, I don't believe I've ever bumped into Sam.
Same here.
I saw on stats that he's got some games under his belt, possibly tournament games, not tournaments I was at. So if you're a new player this year, Sam, you look forward to seeing you at the weekend. If you've been playing for years and years, please accept my apologies. Ross, so representing the Bruces, Ross playing Martels. Ross flip-flops between Martel and Free Folk, I believe. And at the SGT last year, I think he was playing Martel.
He was
I could
indeed.
be wrong on that.
And at LG,
Was
I
it
believe
Martel?
he played Martel.
And he came 4th at the SGT last year. So I'm sure he'll be looking to improve on that.
Yeah.
I think he played Free Folk at the recent Welsh GT and came 13th.
Okay.
So since he's swapping back to Martels, I had the pleasure of playing with the LGT when he played his double Skyreach Bowman, double Sand Skirmishers, or something horrendous. It was horrendous. And I think he's bringing this. I think he's bringing it today.
Yes,
this
he
weekend.
is. He is.
Look forward to. Myself. So reigning SGT champion. I did it with Targaryens, and I've been playing Targaryens for the last year, really. LGT and GT, I was playing Targaryens. But at the Welsh GT, I was lucky enough to win a box of a Martel starter set. I'm trying out the Martels for this one.
Excellent. It's nice to see you. I'm really interested to see how you do with Martels, because obviously, as we all know, you're quite a skilled player. So who knows? I'll probably be coming to you for tips.
Well, we'll see. It's been a bit of a mixed bag in my practice games, but we'll see. Speaking of Martels, David Morris,
Yes.
probably. I think again, David. I think I've only seen him play Martels.
Yeah.
When I played him at the SGT last year, he played a hyper aggressive Martel game, which isn't one you always see. I don't know if you guys. I think Tom, have you played him more recently than I have? Was he still playing quite an aggressive Martel?
Yeah, I played him at the LGT. Lovely chap. We had a really nice game, very close game. How aggressive was he playing? Hard to say. We were playing Dark Words, I'm pretty sure, or the other objective card one, can't remember. But it was a bit of dancing around each other. But we were both Martel, so I mean, there is that.
Yeah.
So yeah, but lovely guy, great opponent. I would also not, I would count him very much as in the mix to win the SGT. We had a really good game.
Yeah, he came 15th last year, but he came 8th at the LGT, which is probably 4 wins, 2 losses, I would guess, maybe even 5 wins. I'm not sure, but certainly up there. And then we get to, I believe, 3 newer players. And again, please forgive me if you've been around for years and I just don't recognize your name. But we've got Ashley Ratcliffe, Ian Hollinshead, who I think, Brad, both of those are pretty new. Am I right?
Ian's been about a bit longer, to be fair. I have
Okay.
seen him at other tournaments. I don't know if he's as active in the scene with the Bruces as maybe some of the others are, but maybe that could possibly be changing. Obviously, with season 7 and things like that. Ashley is one of our newest wardens. He's gone Lannister. And yeah, he's really enjoying the game, which is lovely to see, especially when you get a new player, learning it all and getting that kind of fresh experience, if you want to put it that way. Yeah, I'll be quite interested to see how he gets on this weekend. I've already said to him, you know what the community's like yourselves, boys. Everyone's very, very amicable, very friendly. Yeah, and I think he's really looking forward to testing his mettle this weekend.
Good. Yeah, and Ian's done the Ian's bringing the neutrals. So full respect to Ian for bringing the neutrals. But yeah, welcome to them both. I don't think we saw them at the SGT last year. And then our final player, rounding out the 19, is Brian Simpson, who I have seen at a tournament in Bristol. I'm
Yes.
almost certain.
Yes.
Plays Baratheon. I think he went 2 wins, 1 loss at that tournament. No, beg your pardon. 2 losses, 1 win. So I think, again, a relatively new player on the scene, or not managed to play a lot of tournaments, but
yeah, probably less than a year, I'd say, but hasn't really been on the tournament scene, so to speak. It's more been like local games. Obviously, yet again, he's another warden of ours.
Nice, good. Well, he's brought some nice aggressive lists, so look forward to seeing how he gets on.
Absolutely,
absolutely. One short, just shout out back to Ian. Sorry, not only is Ian running neutrals, which I already respect, he is running Stormcrow archers without Jockin, Aya Stark attachment, who I've never ever seen on the table, and a war elephant in the other list. So mad props to you, Ian. Hope you do well.
Yeah, I think we've all eyed up that Arya Stark attachment in season 6. Thought it's got to work, right? There's got to be some value there. So
yeah.
Please, Ian, show us all whether we were right or wrong for not using it.
Absolutely, yeah, I totally agree with you, boys. Yeah, I mean that nicely leads us on to really what we're going to do tonight is, rather than run through every single list, and I mean, obviously, I'm sure everyone's been looking at the lists since the reveal, really. Like yesterday, what we've done is we're going to basically pick a list each. And we're all going to discuss it, really. We've got different areas where people have got stronger. Obviously, Tom, you've played Starks, you've played Martells, you're playing Lannisters. Joe, you obviously, everyone knows you for Baratheon. Obviously, you've run Targaryen. You're running Martell now. What others have you run? Neutrals. Am I missing anything?
I played Brotherhood Without Banners at the Welsh GT last year.
Yes,
but
you did.
That's it. That's only like what? That's only 4 factions. That's respectable.
Yeah, yeah. We're not quite on the Ray level yet.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, myself, I've played Starks, I've played Lannisters, Targaryens, Martells, Boltons. Yeah. So what we're going to do is going to pick out some singular lists. I'll tell you what, Tom. Should we start with yourself?
Sure, yeah. I thought I'd talk about Pascal's lists, because I
Okay,
think they're
I'll
awesome,
bring those up.
basically. I got excited when I read them and thought these look really cool. Pascal's running Starks, and if I said that someone is taking Starks to a tournament, what do you imagine they're bringing? I reckon you'd perhaps suspect maybe double Tully Cav, see loads of Eddard Commander from Stark, see a lot of John Umber Commander, and also Rob Stark Commander.
Yep.
And Pascal is playing almost none of that. There is 1 unit of Tully Cav in the second list. Fair play. But the other stuff's just really interesting, unusual stuff I haven't seen played very often. So his first list is Howland Reed Commander and Umber Berserkers. Howland Reed's a really interesting commander. He brings some very unusual cards. He brings a card that forces enemies to treat terrain as dangerous terrain for a turn. So they obviously take D3+1 wounds if they move at all. And that card triggers on maneuver, march, or retreat, so they're going to be moving. Really cool cards. He brings another couple cool cards that synergize with Cranigman. And in his list, he has Not only a Kranigman unit, but all of the attachments bring that affiliation. So every unit in this list is a Kranigman unit. And they all do some slightly surprising things, really. You've got Golden Company crossbows who can catch people out with their Sentinel move. Mirror Read on that unit gives hidden traps for a bit more extra damage, or movement reduction. That can also catch your opponent out. If he activates a unit within long range, they can get -1 speed from Mirror. They can get another -1 speed from one of Howland Reed's cards. That can be a big surprise. There's Bog Devils, who are like fairly fragile, sort of hit and run style units. They can retreat after they're attacked, and they've got elusive escape thanks to a Kranigman survivalist. I think that can also catch you off guard.
Yes.
So hit deceptively hard with scout openings and crit blow. And the weaken enemies they charge. So I think they can go in, use the weaken token to hopefully survive the attack back, and then retreat with swift retreat. It's pretty cool. I think it's a really nice little that unit with those two attachments just creates a nice bit of synergy. Yeah, and then the last unit's Jojen Reed in Umber Berserkers, Umber Great Axes. And Jojen has another cool ability, one you don't see very often. He has 2 orders, and they can be spent to reroll attack or defense dice. I just think that's a cool list. The enemy attachments, Jack and Hagar, another interesting attachment, and my perhaps favourite NCU in the game in Eddard Stark. I think Eddard Stark, the 5-point version of Eddard, you see the 6-point version a lot,
Yes.
who brings a huge amount of healing. But this 5-point Eddard Stark is such a fun NCU to play. He has an influence that prevents the influenced unit from being targeted by NCU abilities or tactic zones. And if you think about that, there are so many ways you can play that. You can put that on enemy units so that your opponent can't maneuver their own units off horses or can't heal them off bags. But you can also put that on your own units to stop them being targeted by crowns or to stop them receiving tokens from letters. And of course, the swords as well. So it's just a really nice NCU with loads of options. I think that list is cool. Arya Stark's another piece that can catch people out. She's got a maneuver or retreat action twice per game at the start of an enemy turn. So you can also, that also synergizes nicely with the survivalist for like a cheeky retreat with elusive escape. Just a cool list that gives you, I think, some really interesting options and interesting decisions. And I think, respect to Pascal, that's quite, I would call that quite a high skill cap list, as in the better the player, the more sort of value they can extract from that.
Yes.
Rather
Yeah,
than
100%.
say your typical, okay, I'm running like double Tullycav, they're both really hard to kill, and it doesn't require the same sort of level of skill and finesse to run that list well. It's not too difficult to charge units of 3-up armor, morale 5 guys who heal 2 wounds every time they pass a panic test at your opponent. So yeah, just really cool list. I think the off list also interesting. I'm assuming it's the off list. That is an assumption. It might be the one he's planning on playing the most. But that is Roderick Cassell, who's another commander you don't see that often, and also brings some quite interesting, unusual cards. So yeah, props to Pascal for bringing some exciting lists, some stuff we don't see too often, and I'm curious to see how he gets on. And
Absolutely.
I would be worried playing into that first list in particular, because it's a lot to keep track of for your opponent to remember.
Yeah, I was just thinking actually, Tom. There's something to be said for lists like that. Not only are they units you don't see very often, but they're quite complicated NCUs, or there's a lot to keep track of, which really increases the mental load, both on yourself playing them, but hopefully you know the list quite well, but on your opponent. I mean, I could definitely see if I bump into that over the weekend, I'll be spending quite a lot of time on my phone checking, reminding myself what Eddard Stark does, or what this does and what that does. I'm definitely on some of the scenarios where there's already a lot going on. Increasing the mental load on your opponent is not a bad idea.
Yeah, absolutely. I will just interject and just say I have just seen the WhatsApp chat. Hello, Pascal. He said he's just tuned in time. Sorry, he said tuned in. Sorry, just in time to hear Tom call me high skill. Yeah, but it's true, Pascal. You're a very good player, and it's a very good list.
Well, just have to prove it tomorrow, Pascal. That's what I'm going to say.
What, jury's out? Well, it brings on the second list then, Roger Cassell. If you want to lead the way on that one.
Yeah, sure. So this list has, I think probably the most interesting thing about this list is Brendan Tully attachment. He's the cavalry attachment who brings marked target for a vulnerable in long range and also outflank. And I'm also curious tomorrow. I'm hoping to catch up with Pascal. I'm hoping to play Pascal because we've never played.
I
And
am
it would
open
be
to bribes.
interesting. Thank you, Brad.
I'm kidding.
Make it so. Make it so. But I'm curious if he is going to outflank. I always found outflank is such I'm not a fan of outflank, if I'm honest. It's such a high risk strategy to outflank a unit. It's tempting to see the potential. I've done it a few times, but yeah, very high risk and on a unit that are quite vulnerable. So on the Umber Ravagers, who are a 5-up defense unit. So would be interested. It might be that he's there just because of the marked target, but there are some good. I mean, you've got the Windsfeld Guardian, arguably a better 1-point attachment if you just want to kind of buff the unit a bit.
I've
And
got
this
to be
list
honest.
has so
Sorry,
many
go on. Sorry.
ways to put out vulnerable. No, go on, Brad.
No, I've got to be honest. I've played Brendan Tully in the Ravagers, and I absolutely love it.
Go on. How do you make that work
then? So going to the Ravagers card, obviously, if you go up against arguably, say a bowman, for instance, that's in the middle of the table, it's going to be in the middle of the table, usually outflanked, flanked, not outflanked, by an infantry unit just to give it some protection. I really like running Ravagers straight into infantry units because you just get all the buffs. Because you've got fewer remaining ranks, which means you gain the vicious keyword, and you also pass out that panic token. You've got ways of rolling higher dice as a start. Is Catelyn in this list? Yes, she is. So you could easily get yourself to 8 dice hitting on 3s. Also making that, with the panic, let's be honest, if you're outflanking, it's usually a side charge, so it's going to be -3 on the panic check. And before you're charging, you're making that opponent vulnerable as well. So you're really trying to chop hard into a unit with the Ravagers, and you've got ways of keeping them healthy.
Do you suppose that the vulnerable from the marked target is perhaps to open up the combat prowess card and the press advantage card? There's like 2 cards there from Roderick that benefit from the opponent having a token. I'm wondering if it will be an outflank strategy or if it's just a case of like, I just need more tokens, so I'm going to bring another thing with marked target. That would be interesting to catch up with Pascal tomorrow, perhaps at the end of the event, not to make him spill all his beans, but just to find out, how has he played that. Would be interesting to hear. Has he outflanked them or not, or is it just about maybe the marked targets enough to put him in there?
I found them a really aggressive piece. And it does make your opponent think, especially when you've got, for arguably, so obviously you've got Tully Cavaliers here. They could be looking in your front with the Ravagers possibly coming into the outflank on the same side. That's a scary prospect for anybody.
True. Yeah, I wouldn't enjoy absorbing the charge.
Yeah, you could literally double tap with cavalry and then move on. But anyway, sorry, carry on.
I know, all good. Yeah, I think not a huge amount more to say, really. We've got Tully Cav, Winterfell Guardian, Umber Ravagers with a Sworn Sword Captain for, again, another vulnerable token, and Roderick in Golden Company Crossbows for another vulnerable token. I was surprised the Crannogman Survivalist is on there. Yeah.
Is that maybe with Sentinel? Maybe the terrain playing with that? Going across stakes, maybe, or...
Yeah, possibly. It's an interesting piece, the Survivalist. Yeah, does give you options when you're putting the terrain down at the start of the round. Brad, are we random terrain tomorrow, or are we picking?
So tomorrow is 2 pieces per player. Me personally, excuse me, I'm not a massive fan of random because I always find you end up with basically stakes and walls. I know on the flip side of that coin, you can get very, oh, I'm playing Lannisters, I'm going to be against two happy trees, or that kind of side of things. So there's not really a happy ground, so to speak, no pun intended. But I just prefer Chosen, if I'm totally honest. So usually as a TO, I push with Chosen.
Yeah, like good to know. Yeah, so maybe an interesting note, sorry, we're off topic here a bit, but just for like maybe newer players or players newer to the tournament scene, 'cause I know we've got a few newer people attending tomorrow. When terrain is placed randomly, it's not as random as you think because, of course, 2 dice creates a bell curve, so you're actually much more likely to roll player's choice, hedges and walls, and then palisades, stakes in the middle, and then forest, where trees, corpsewells, and bogs, like statistically a lot less likely to be rolled. So
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
people
exactly.
think it's random, but it's kind of not random.
Yeah, you can kind of roughly guess what you're going to get.
Yeah, yeah. If you ever
um,
played Settlers of Catan, you know what I'm talking about. Yeah, cool.
well, that brings us on to the NCUs that's being played in that list. So we've got Catelyn Sansa and Peter Baelish. How do you think they're going to be used, Tom?
Well, Baelish is perhaps my favourite NCU in the game. I know I said that about Eddard Stark, but Baelish, at least in the sense that he's neutral and you can play him in all the different factions. Baelish is another real like high skill cap piece. So in like I think the more you play Baelish, the more options you discover, the more things he can do. So always nice to see Baelish getting played. In this list, I think he's interesting in Starks. I think Starks, of course, want swords and horses, but maybe don't get as sort of mind-blowing a benefit from owning them as some other factions do. I don't think they want them as much as, say, Martell wants swords or crown, or as much as Lannister want crown or bags. So yeah, that does for me make Baelish maybe just a shade less valuable, but I think a good player can get really good value out of Baelish, and any list that's got a ranged unit in considers Baelish for the possibility to double tap, right? So to put Baelish on something that's not swords, counter swords to do a shot, and then be threatening another shot off the tactics zone board, +1 in your activation. So I think really any ranged unit, you should be thinking about putting Baelish in your list. And then Catelyn's obviously a real staple for Starks, like you said earlier. And Sansa's an interesting piece. Sansa, I think you put on the list if you really like your commander cards, because obviously she'll let you find them and draw them back out your discard. Or perhaps she'll just find you assault orders over and over again, which is her other favorite trick, because it's a great card. So yeah, I think that's a pretty standard 3 NCUs for Starks, really. No big surprises there.
Yeah.
I think the bigger surprise is, Brynden on the Umber Ravagers, and to some extent the Golden Company crossbows are, for 7 points, they're often hard to fit in a list, but they're in this one.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think they offer a better solution than Stark Bowman, don't they? Let's be honest.
Stark Bowman. Yeah, I think you can make a pretty solid argument that Stark Bowman are maybe the worst ranged unit in the game on paper, but sometimes you just don't have 7 points and you get a lot of value out of having a ranged unit on the board.
Very true.
Yeah.
Yeah, fair enough. Okay, all right, thank you for that. Joe, what list did you select?
Well, I have selected Lucas's. That was always one that I'd be interested in because I think Lucas has he is likely to win this tournament, I would suggest. He's the 10th highest ranked player in the UK, consistently comes top of the table, top edge of the table in tournaments. We played Bolton in the Welsh GT and I think came a slightly disappointing 8th, but he's back to Baratheon now. So I think we're likely to see a good showing from him. And I was also quite intrigued by the fact that I feel like he's broken the first rule of Baratheons by only bringing 2 NCUs in both his lists. Baratheon's quite a zone hungry action because they want crowns and letters, but they also are quite grindy, so they want swords and bags, and they're also slow, so they want horses. So you want a lot of zones, and I personally never managed to really make 2 NCUs work, so I was very intrigued to see that Lucas has brought. not just one, but both his lists being 2 NCUs. So I suppose to get into it, the first list is a Renly side list with a Renly charismatic heir. He's the sort of good morale, bit of healing, it's a bit of a grindy commander. And Lucas has brought Renly and Stag Knights.
Yes.
So that's his commander. Golden Company crossbowman with Brienne the Blue. So Brienne the Blue, when Renly's unit is attacked, Brienne the Blue can attack whoever attacks them. So this combination, Stag Knights with Renly and then Golden Company crossbow with Brienne the Blue, is, one that I think every Baratheon player has probably tried because it's such a attractive combination.
Yeah.
And then he's brought 2 units of Highgarden pikemen, one with Loras Tyrell that brings Deadly Bloom, so pikemen heal a wound when they attack, and Deadly Bloom lets you do a wound when you heal, so that's a nice little synergy there. And the other Highgarden pikeman, which is probably more dangerous, is the one with Courtney Penrose attachment, who brings Tactical Reposition, which is a fantastic ability in Baratheon. That extra 3-inch movement can make all the difference. And then it also improves your already scary charge with your Highgarden pikeman. Final unit is Rose Knights, with probably what I would say is the best attachment for Rose Knights, which is the Pathfinder. Yeah. I personally don't really like Rose Knights. I think they're too easy to ignore. But anyone that's ever got into a grind with Rose Knights knows how unpleasant it is. So, they do a job, and giving them the Thornwatch Sentinel makes it much harder for your opponent to ignore them, because they can, potentially move around the board a bit faster if there's terrain. They've got Furious Charge, which, the problem with Rose Knights is they only do 7 hits with no keywords. So if they're not wounded, all they're ever going to do is 7 hits on a 3+ with no keywords, which is very ignorable. Thornwatch Sentinel gives them vulnerable on the charge, which makes them a bit scarier, and it also has Dauntless if they do get into the grind. And I can't really emphasize this enough. I strongly recommend no one ever grinds with Rose Knights with the Dauntless unit in them.
Yeah.
Thornwatch Sentinel is the only really aggressive attachment you can put in them, apart from Courtney Penrose. But if you've got Courtney Penrose elsewhere to move the Rose Knights around, you're probably sorted. And then NCU wise, he's brought Elena and Varys, which are 2 fantastic NCUs. So I think on the face of it, this is a list with lots of strong combat units that are going to win a fight, and a couple of NCUs that can kind of protect them from anything your opponent's going to do. Elena particularly is going to turn off things that are going to cause you a bad time. That's influences or anything that's going to mess with the good Baratheon units. I think what this list does, I do personally still think this is two NCUs is challenging for Baratheon. But having said that, the 5 combat units gives Lucas the ability to sort of almost target saturation. So I talked about ignoring the Rose Knights, but I would also recommend ignoring the Stag Knights, because you don't want to be getting into a fight with Renly where every time you hit him, Brienne's unit shoots you. No one wants that. But now you've got the problem that the best play is to ignore 2 units, and it starts getting quite challenging there. So I think it is a tough nut to crack. I mean, clearly the ones to try and take out early doors, the 2 Highgarden pikemen, you don't want them charging into you. But on the flip side, if you go for the Highgarden pikemen, you're going to get some Stag Knights probably flanking you. And Stag Knights are overshadowed somewhat by Rose Knights and Kingsmen, but from round 4 onwards, particularly, they hurt a lot.
Yeah.
But yeah, interesting list. I don't think there's not anything. Keep your eye on the. Don't forget about the Brienne the Blue retaliatory attack. And I don't think. I mean, there's not any big surprises in there. You don't want to forget about the retaliatory attack from Brienne the Blue. You don't want to forget about tactical reposition. But otherwise, it's a pretty straightforward, does what it says on the tin type list. And Lucas has got the tools to protect that list from being messed with. So be strong on on scenarios where it's all about fighting over the middle objective. I think it's going to be very, very tough to crack.
Yeah.
The second list, again, a 5 combat unit, 2 non-combat unit list. This time on the Stannis side. It's Stannis 1 True King, which is probably the best commander in Baratheon, certainly the most consistent. In Kingsman, I think you always see in Kingsman. Sorry, I think you always see in Kingsman because of the synergies with Dauntless into the Last and all that. This one has double R'hllor Lightbringers with Davos and Brian Farring. So these are the ones that give now rerolls on equal or more ranks. So you're getting double R'hllor Lightbringers with rerolls. It's upsetting for anyone, I think.
Terrifying, frankly.
Crown and Scouts, they do a good job of getting the archers in position with the tactical reposition. Again, I think as someone who started playing Baratheons, tactical reposition is so strong in Baratheons that I'm like, I kind of want it in every list I ever play in. It's great in any list, but it's really good in Baratheon.
Right.
And then the Baratheon Halberdiers with Stag Knight Nobles. It's a fine anchor unit. Stick it in the middle with taunt. No one really wants to fight it. Stag Knight Noble gives it a little bit more punch. Again, it's a very, I would say it's a very straightforward list. There's not a lot of tricks there. It's just strong units doing powerful things. The NCUs surprised me slightly. Melisandre, I guess you're sort of spamming vicious, or you're spamming panic test a little bit with the 2 Lightbringers, then Melisandre, and then Melisandre doing a bit of vicious potentially. I guess he's probably mainly going to be putting that on the Halberdiers, because they can take the wounds. Davos can supply aid a lot of the wounds back, so that's it's a decent combo. Interesting to see Littlefinger rather than Alistair Florent. They do very similar things. Twice a game, Littlefinger can stand on one zone, treat it as another zone. Alistair Florent takes a zone and moves to another zone. So they're quite similar. The main thing that Littlefinger does differently is he can also count as controlling a zone for a round. I would suggest this is probably a way to get crowns without where you can't for some reason. You'd much more like to see Alistair Florent, I think, than Peter Baelish. I'm sure Lucas has got something specific in mind that he wants to do with this here, and it's not obvious to me, which is a bit worrying, actually.
Yeah, is it not perhaps just to double tap with the ranged units, maybe? Although I guess you're right, you could do that with Florent, couldn't you?
Yeah, you could do that with Alistair Florent. I mean, they're functionally very similar, so I don't think it's that meaningful either way. You just get to do it slightly more often with Alistair Florent.
Right.
Yeah, I don't know. There's not a lot in it really.
I have a hunch, right? Lucas got to the final last year at the SGT. Lost in the final. Our scenario for the final this year is Feast for Crows. Is this last list just for that last scenario? We've got double Lightbringers and Melisandre with corpses guaranteed on the table.
Yeah, I mean, Feast for Crows does have a tendency to be symmetrical, and if your side of the board is getting shot twice around by double Lightbringers, you'll be under pressure to do something about it. So that could be a good shout.
Would be strong, on that scenario.
Excellent. That's a nice insight there. Thank you. The list I chose for myself was Chris Tamplin's, if I'm totally honest with you, being the only Bolton player. I was quite interested to see what he was going to bring. And to be honest with you, I was a little surprised. Bringing Steelshanks Walton as commander, putting it in the Dreadful Archers, which is, I'll be honest with you, has kind of confused me a little bit. I've just highlighted the card there. I've always thought he was more of a melee commander, and having Roos in the Blackguards, I mean, not a bad option by the way. But the fact he can do it at ranged, yeah, it'd be interesting the reason why those aren't swapped around. I mean, Damon Dance for me in the Dreadful Archers is always a great selection. Just getting that 3-inch maneuver, like you, funny enough, like what you've just said with tactical repo, just having that extra maneuver, but being able to like actually do a maneuver, so pivoting and facing any way you want to make that shot, is just phenomenal. Yeah, I mean, we all know what Dreadful Archers do, right? You know, hitting on good numbers. You want them to be shooting a unit that's engaged with one of your own, just so you can get all the extras. Um, then we've got obviously the Blackguards. Since they had their last update, having the 5-inch maneuver, giving the unit precision, and I think going hitting on 4s to now hitting on 3s, it just made them so much better. Yeah, a unit I have a lot of time for, to be honest with you. They're kind of a cornerstone, really, of Bolton's, aren't they? Inside of that, we've got Roose Bolton. So you've got the calculated cruelty. So a very common tactic with Roos in the Blackguards, which I've done myself. March him into the middle of the board. You know, get that long range kind of morale test going constantly. And then obviously the intimidating reputation. Sorry, that's what I meant. Sorry, the intimidating reputation with the calculated cruelty of expending the token. Which obviously means that they lose all abilities. So any defensive unit that stood in front of him. So, I mean, for argument's sake, those Rose Knights, all of that healing, dealing, and all the rest of it, boom, gone with one token. You do have Grunt inside of that. So there's going to be a lot of relying on tokens to put on other units that potentially they're going to be engaged with, just to try and block as many hits as possible. Yeah, I don't know how much you guys know about the tactics deck after it changed, but the base deck can pass out relatively quite a good number of tokens. At one point, I thought I was playing a Stannis list. It was quite ridiculous the amount it could kick out. And to be honest with you, Roos has got some as well. If I just bring up, it's not actually this list; it'll be the other list I'll bring up on his tactics cards. But he can bring even more tokens to the party, so to speak. We've got the Dreadfort Flayed Men. Once again, yeah, I was going to say, have they got better or worse? To be honest with you, like there's not a major difference. They lost Intimidating Presence in the last update, but having that precision and vicious, and having that kind of link, especially with the Glory Seeker of stubborn tenacity. What you want to do is get these flayed men dug into somebody, and then just keep shooting that unit that they're engaged with the bowman, because at the end of the day, stubborn tenacity is just a free way of passively passing wounds off, isn't it? And obviously having two of them, you can either run them two on one side, you can split them up, put them on the flanks, provide a bit of a kind of a problem. I mean, I imagine really what would happen here is both cavalry go up either side, the Blackguards in the middle, and then you just have the bowmen floating around in the middle to try and support wherever necessary. This is, before I forget, a 4-2 list. So it's 6 activations overall. It's very light on activations. But you do have Walder Frey in there, who, let's be honest, is a very, very, very strong NCU now. Yeah, definitely needs attention, which we'll bring up in a conversation in a little bit in a while. But the fact she can restore 2 wounds, plus obviously do whatever zone she lands on, or once per game she can basically not take the tactics board and heal 2 plus whatever current round you're on. So let's be honest, most of the time you're probably going to use her round 3, most likely round 4. So 6 wounds back on a unit, which is absolutely disgusting. She's she's an auto take now for Boltons, but we'll see what obviously season 7 brings as well. Jean Paul, someone I don't use a lot of, but still relatively okay, quite good. I think compared to other NCUs, she's not as strong as like some of the other ones. I quite prefer Tybalt myself. But I mean, having a -2 panic on someone, obviously, if someone is going to come towards the Blackguards, getting that long range first of all, you can make sure you get those tokens out with the morale test they're going to have to take because of Roos. But also, just horrific visage. Like you're a -3 with potentially another -2. Get a corpse pile nearby, -6. You know what I mean? It's there's a good chance of that playing.
Yeah, I think, Brad, I think if I were to come up against this list at the weekend, this specific one, I think your first thought should be, how can I win this scenario without fighting
Yes.
these units?
Yeah,
Because you're not
absolutely.
going to win a grind against, Dreadful Blackguards with Roos and Grunt. You're probably not going to win a grind against Flayed Men with Glory Seekers. So, it's a 6 activation list. It's very, very fighty.
Yeah.
Look at your options about, how you can make your activation advantage and your NCO advantage win the scenario. Because I basically, I talked before about ignoring Rose Knights, but I think Blackguards with Grunt and Bruce Bolton in, if there's ever a unit to try and ignore, that it's definitely them.
Absolutely. I mean, when you look at the actual total points for that unit alone, it's a 10-point unit. It's very expensive. That's a quarter of your list.
Yeah, I mean Blackguards are much harder to, the upgraded Blackguards with Precision and Fissures are much more dangerous than they ever used to be.
Yeah.
But I just don't think you're ever going to kill them. I can't see a scenario where you're going to kill, a 3-up armor unit that's likely to be after rolling defense dice. So let's say you 7 attacks, you're lucky and get 4 through their defenses.
Mm.
They're going to block probably 2 of them. You're probably going to have at least 1 token on you.
Yeah.
So you're going to be doing 2 wounds every time you attack them, and then Ward of Frey can just, restore them immediately.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely.
Very
Yeah. So that's the entire of the first list. And the second list is Roos Commander. If I just go over his tactics cards quickly, you've got Whispered Threats. So when an enemy NCU activates, if it claims any zone, this activation after resolving a zone's effect, you can target up to 3 enemy units, and you basically do a traffic light. You could obviously put 1 on each other unit, so 1 on a, what I mean is, split those 3 tokens up between 3 units, or you can put all 3 on 1. But having that ability to just basically have ambush on a card is great. It's very strong. You've also got Cold Regards. So when an enemy combat unit activates, if it's in long range of a friendly combat unit, target the enemy, it suffers 1 hit plus 1 additional hit for each condition token on it. It seems like really since the updates with Bolton that they have become extremely token driven. I suppose initially they were like they were supposed to be the panic army, even though Lannisters did it better. But yeah, there's some of these cards, if you could just out token your opponent, they can only remove so many during a game, which makes it very difficult. Obviously, if you can keep weakens on or vulnerables, even panics, obviously. Last one is Dreadfort Secrets. So start of any turn, target 1 enemy combat unit. You can expend up to those 2 conditions. If you remove 1 token, they discard a random card. If you remove 2 tokens, you actually get to see their hand, and then remove 1. That in itself is amazing. Being able to on that crunch turn just go, right, I need to see what you've got in your hand, and I'm definitely getting rid of 1. Stronger cards that come out, or if it's like Devastating Impact, for instance, when you're going to get charged by a Stark, or unfortunately I'm going to go back to Martel's, but obviously if it's Rising Temperatures in that turn, just to be able to get rid of it is strong. So those are the cards for that. So I've just come back out of that. Once again, we've got Roos inside the Blackguards, once again with Grunt. So that going back to your original point, Joe, of basically saying, how do you deal with that unit? Then you've got the Dreadfort Blackguards again, with Ramsey and Theon. Once again, he's an absolute great attachment or commander. I prefer Ramsey commander to, if it was me, I'd probably prefer it to Steelshanks myself. Because Ramsey's just, his cards are, it's all about healing. You basically can't kill anything. But obviously, just highlighting him, he's got this sadistic acceleration. So you can expend a panic token on the defender, which gives you your highest dice and rerolls. So obviously, considering Blackguards roll 7 dice hitting on 3s, and you're re-rolling those for precision and vicious, is quite scary. And Theon, obviously, it's now obviously when you activate, you dish out that panic token. But you can, obviously with the cards you've got in hand, things like that, you can put those panic tokens out beforehand, before you charge or something like that. Once again, Damon Dance for me in the Archers, very kind of standard setup with the two of them. I don't see why you'd run anything else in the Archers for them, personally, unless you're going to put someone like Roos. But I think Damon Dance for me kind of holds the weight better, and a naked unit of flayed men. To be honest with you, this setup with the two Blackguards, the Archers, and the flayed men is something like when I was playing Boltons, I would play. The only difference is I would have Ramsey as commander, not Roos. And I wouldn't have Grunt in the Blackguards with Roos. I would have Ben Bones in the Blackguards with Ramsey, because I wanted him to be more an aggressive piece to go forward and reroll charges, that kind of thing. In terms of the NCUs, we do have Tybalt here. I'll just highlight him for people that don't know him. I'm sure everybody does by now. But once per round, if Tybalt's not on the board yet, he can select one zone when an enemy NCU activates, and says basically, if you claim that zone this turn, I could choose one enemy unit to become vulnerable and weakened. Once again, becomes very, very good for passing out tokens. A good way of kind of using that control with Boltons. And obviously the bit underneath here, if you do claim tactics with him, you can actually look at your opponent's deck and pass out a panic token. So once again, passing another token out, and being able to sift through your opponent's cards and go, right, I don't want you to have that one. I want you to have this weaker card first. So if you do draw, like next turn, maybe you're going to have to discard down to get like that second card, maybe. Yeah, really, really good. Order Freight, as we've already covered, probably, in my opinion, the strongest NCU in the game right now. I think she's almost too strong. I think that definitely needs looking at. And last but not least, we've got Lord Varys. So whether obviously he's on the board or not, he can still do his thing. So it's just a way of Bolton's getting something else. Yeah, so I mean, I think with this list, to be honest with you, Chris has got a really good shout with coming first. Yeah, so we'll see what tomorrow brings, and the weekend, of course. Sorry, Saturday and Sunday.
Should we do our predictions, Brad? Should we perhaps all? Should we reckon? Should we all predict a dark horse?
Yeah, I tell you what. Yeah. So pick a dark horse, and maybe who you think would win, just based on the lists you've seen and looked at. A bit after the list reveals kind of happened yesterday.
My dark horse is David Morris, for sure. Keep a cool head, David. You got this. Just go back to that game we had at the LGT. Such a good game. He's a really good player.
Yes.
I haven't seen him win a tournament yet. I just may not have been at the right one. But yeah, that's my dark horse.
Fair enough. Joe?
Interesting. My dark horse, for similar reasons actually, and actually he's playing the same faction, is Ross McIntosh. I played against Ross's Martells at the LGT, and whilst I did beat him, very, very, very close, and I can absolutely see that list taking him to the top of the table, especially since he came fourth last year. So I don't know if he's necessarily a favourite. I'd say he's probably not one of the favourites to win it, but I could definitely see it happening.
No, fair enough. Yeah, I mean,
are you sort of thinking about the double Bowman, double Sand Skirmisher, this list?
Yeah, I think that gives you a lot to think about. Let's be honest.
That's a lot of shots coming your way.
No doubt.
Right, I'll just come off of that list. Yeah, like you say, it's looking at the span on the field and the experience that's there, and everything else. I'll be honest with you. Like, I mean, a lot of I'll be honest. I'm probably going to pick one of the Wardens of my own. I've always seen James Ray as a dark horse. He's very knowledgeable with the game. He knows how to play things at the right times. yeah, he's never quite got over the line. So I'd always put him as my dark horse. He's a very good player to play against. Predictions for, statistically, list wise, who do you think would be the winner? Tom, if we start off with you again.
Who will win? Sorry.
Yeah.
Oh, Brad, now you're asking the difficult questions. Who is gonna win? I genuinely think, I'm not just saying this, I genuinely think there are I think almost anyone could. It's really close. Like, there's a lot of players who have, come really close in the past. I'm probably gonna give it Lucas. I think he's figured out some magic with 2 NCUs. He came second last time. I've played him once. Great game. He beat me at the SGT last year. I'm going to give it Lucas. Yeah, I think my money's on Lucas.
Fair enough. Joe?
Well, I'm afraid, boringly, I'm probably also going to go with Lucas. In fact, if we all pile the pressure on him, maybe he'll choke, and then I can win.
All right, you've sold me. I'm going Lucas as well then. Lucas, if you don't win, sorry about the mental breakdown. Right, yeah. So that brings us really to prizes over the weekend. So what I've got here is a little slide just to show everybody the kind of things that you guys can win over the weekend. We've been extremely lucky this year. As you can see on the pictures, I actually got sponsorship from Joe, which do the storage cases, and they've actually supplied us one of their nicest ones. To retail, these must be around £90 to £100. We've got 2 of them, which will be for first and second place. As you can see, we've got the first and second trophies there. So the gold obviously goes to the winner, and the greeny type one, which is like our kind of wardeny type colour, for the runner-up. I also got sponsorship from Golden Maple. You may have seen these guys on Facebook, they do a lot of basically paintbrush painting accessories. So what we've got is a paintbrush set there, but also one of the sponges to help with textiles. So if you're looking for that kind of rusty look or like that kind of war-torn type thing. Really good brushes. Once again, can't thank them enough. I've put the the colouring book on here, which is actually going to be the attendance prize, as well as a tactics board for everybody that's attending over the weekend. So if you do get the buy, because we will have 19 players, so there will be a buy, at least you've got something to do in the meantime. Just make sure you bring your colouring pencils. Which brings me on to another prize, which is relatively new, really, for the Wardens, which is for best sporting. We're going to have the custom Wardens dice tray with Wardens dice. If you are, the best, voted player over the weekend, if you put in a gentlemanly performance, let's put it, and become a great opponent for anyone you're playing, you've got a chance of taking a dice tray home with the dice. Which brings me to literally the last, but not by all means not least, the golden cock, the Reek Award.
Coveted golden dick.
I know Rob Grant is begging for this, but we will see. It's a sought after prize, I must say.
Who sponsors this one then? Whose was that? Which company has paid you to produce this?
All your needs come from Viewpoint Glazing. Can come anywhere to glaze your windows.
Oh, man. I just hope this YouTube video gets taken down because someone reports that. That's what I'm going to say.
Fair enough.
Do Golden Maple know you've put it right next to the logo?
I haven't told them no. Well, it is golden, so.
Oh, mate. It's something else, Brad. It's something else.
It is. Well, it certainly makes us unique amongst the tournament base, right?
Imagine coming last and then to add insult to injury, Brad puts that in your hand.
Come on, that would be That's your like prize on the mantelpiece, right? That is a pride of place award. That one.
I mean, you can show your kids, your grandkids. Like it's endless.
If I win that, you will never see me again. Oh,
Which brings me on to literally the last piece before we talk about our next section of season 7. There is going to be best in faction, and they're going to be the sleeves that were made by UCATS.
Oh, cool.
They were really really generous enough to give us these. And let's be
Awesome.
honest, they're really cool designs, and they look cool
they're
when
amazing.
they're like wrapping your deck. They look cool on the table.
They're gorgeous, actually. Yeah, I have a set of the Lannister ones. They're really nice.
Yeah, I used my Martell ones for the first time this week actually, and yeah, they're cool. They're so cool.
Thank you, Grant at UCATS.
Yes, thank you, Grant. Okay, so really that now brings us to season 7, guys. How are we feeling about it? We've obviously I don't know if everybody's heard the podcast on Spotify. They have said that this season 7 is entirely focused on combat units and NCUs. Yeah, how do we feel about that? First off,
I have opinions,
Well,
Brad.
I think overall, very, very positive. I mean, it's been let's be honest, the last year has been a bit of a slog. You know, it, is the game going to continue? What's happening to Simon? Are we ever going to see product again? And the playtest material's been a bit, it's been a bit of a distraction. Not many of us have been able to take part for various reasons. And then I feel like in the last couple of weeks that it's there's been a real good buzz. We're getting a proper season release. The comms from Simon has been decent, coherent. The podcast that the developer put out a few days ago, where he talked about, there's people still working on the app. There's people still working on balancing on units. It felt a lot more positive. I think there was a slight, and the developer admitted it was a miscommunication around the amount of releases there's going to be in a year, where they announced there's now going to be 3 releases a year, and that was clarified to be it's the same release schedule with the capacity for an emergency balance patch.
yes.
So we've lost players locally who have cited, I struggle to keep up when it's 2 updates a year. I'm not dealing with 3 updates a year. It's not 3 updates a year. It's still the same 2 patch format that they've been doing the last few years, but with the capacity for emergency patch. So overall, I'm just very pleased with with the direction it's going. It feels really positive. We can get into some of the specifics they've released, but I feel really good about it, and I'm pleased because I think it shows the game's moving in the right direction.
No, absolutely. Yeah, I'd echo that completely. I mean, they have said on that podcast that the target for the updates are really for underperforming units and also low pick rate ones as well. There is obviously going to be looking at some of the overperforming units as well. I think one thing that was mentioned was the King's card for both Joffrey and Renly were going to be looked at. It'd be interesting to see what they do with them.
It will, yeah. I think those are, let's say lesser picked units. I also really like the approach. I agree that it's like really great to have some comms from Simon in here. It's just great to have an update basically, because we've been waiting for it's quite a long time since season 6 was launched. So that's really good. Nice to see that it's I do think it's bringing people back into the fray as well, who'd maybe wandered off to have a look at other games, which is cool. And I also really like the approach of let's like not focusing on nerfing things. Like, okay, there will be a few things that get adjusted slightly that maybe need it, but mostly focusing on all the various units that just don't get picked much. And certainly for me, when I build lists, I'm on my 3rd faction now, and I think in all 3 you do sort of get to a point where you have your kind of go-to picks, right? And then there are a bunch of other units that you you almost just sort of stop considering, or you
Hmm.
need like a particular plan in mind, or a particular card or commander. So I think that's a great approach to just try and pull up the underperforming units and NCUs rather than going crazy nerfing stuff. So I
Absolutely,
like the approach.
absolutely. I mean, to start off with, I mean, obviously, I won't go as in depth as it was on the podcast, but to kind of start off with Starks, they were receiving a fair substantial amount of buffs. In fact, they've got the most combat units modified in this season 7 update. But they're saying Tully Cavs have been slightly modified. Rob Stark, apparently King of the North NCU, has had an entire rework. How do we feel kind of along the Stark lines? I mean, if they are getting the most combat units reviewed, it's about time, would you say?
Well, it makes a lot of sense. Stark's a really big faction, so they're like one of the original factions. They have a huge number of units, and there are a lot of Stark units you may not have seen or certainly don't see often. So I think it makes sense that if you're focused on improving underperforming units, like I think to me Starks jump out as like a faction that do have a bunch of like underperforming units. And the rework of Rob just is great because that Rob NCU, I mean, it's just he did a rework. Like
Yeah,
it's not great. It's always been odd that his NCU ability like is a slightly weird version of Outflank. It's like zone dependent.
Yeah, it's
Outflank's
a worse
already
it's a worse
pretty
outflank, isn't it? And outflank's already pretty terrible.
yeah,
exactly, yeah. So that I think that'll be welcome news to a lot of Star players. And I really like the approach. It's interesting. I thought in the what do you call it, the podcast, I guess that was aired. There's a bit of like an apologetic tone around changing things multiple times. I know is it the Black Tide Chosen got
yes,
mentioned for
yeah,
like, yeah, we're reworking them again, we're sorry. And I really respect Simon's commitment to just make the game good and like make it balanced and not, like it takes a bit of humility, I think, to rework a unit multiple times and sort
yeah.
of admit that like the last thing you thought would work maybe hasn't achieved what we wanted it to. I think, completely reworking an NCU like Rob, I'm like, yeah, fair enough. Like that, absolutely. Like, there's no need to, you know, be stubborn, stick to your guns, or get. I think I'm glad to see like Simon don't get too drawn into like never ever changing the theme or feel of anything. Like
Yeah.
Rob doesn't
Yeah,
have to have an outflank ability, right? Like he can do something totally different, and that's fine.
I
And I'd
agree with
rather
you on
see
that,
him getting
Tom.
played.
Yeah, I was really struck by that sort of slightly, oh, yeah, I'm sorry, we're hitting these units again. But that's so much better than the alternative, which is, well, we reworked them 2 years ago, and we got to rework 12 other units that actually do work quite well before we get back to that one. No, it's absolutely fine to keep going with the ones that aren't working.
Yeah.
Just on the point of the Starks, we've seen 2 releases so far. We've seen
Yes.
Stark Sworn Swords and the Umber Berserkers,
Yeah.
and I know they're both starter set units, and the developer mentioned that was probably we were going to see a lot of starter set units reworked in this or improved in this, which I think is good because outside of Targaryens and maybe Night's Watch, like there's a lot of starter set units that just never see play.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely.
And we
Yeah.
all own a bunch of them, right?
Yep.
Like
Yeah, exactly.
every player like is sat on, 2 units of Sworn Swords or 2 units of Martel Spearmen or whatever. That like, how often do you really put them in a list?
Yeah. And I suppose really Simon are considering the new player. That when they get that starter set, they've got some really cool units in there that might be able to do some more.
Mm,
Yeah,
definitely.
there's nothing worse than like I've just bought the Greyjoy starter set. What should my list be? So, well, the Bowmen aren't very good.
Yeah.
The Reavers aren't very good, and the Reapers aren't very good. So if you get rid of all the starter set apart from Balon, then start building a list, with new stuff. It's not great, is it?
Yeah. Precisely. Yeah. I mean, another army that has had a considerable number of changes apparently is Free Folk. They're doing the Giants and Monsters focus really, but apparently most of the number of those changes are due to the giant rule changing. What do we think maybe that could entail?
Well, I think you're probably asking the wrong people because we don't really see a lot of free folk down in the far west.
Oh, fair enough. Fair enough.
I wasn't really aware. I mean, I know Varamir Six Skins is the high activation Varamir Six Skin type lists are perhaps the most competitive. I was aware of that much, but I hadn't really clocked that maybe monsters were underperforming apart from the mammoths. So I'm not really across the issue with giants. I always thought giants were perfectly respectable.
Yeah, I mean they're
And it gave your opponent
hard-ish
something
to
think
kill,
about.
but to be honest with you, once you get to a point, you can. I mean, they're only like 8 wounds each from memory. Correct me if I'm wrong, of course, on the WhatsApp chat or anything. But you can get round it.
But lots of people really like playing big stompy boys.
Oh, absolutely. That's why you get free folk.
Yeah, exactly. And if interestingly, he said that they were reworking monsters and monsters adjacent.
Yeah.
Like the bear riders was mentioned and things. And I think the mammoths and the bear riders need some love. So if some sort of more monster adjacent stuff gets a slightly tankier free folk army becomes viable, I think that'd be quite cool.
Yeah, I mean, I'm really interested to see what they do with the Frozen Shore bear riders because I mean they're 4 wounds each, but I don't, if I remember rightly, is it their attacks aren't great? It's to be honest with you, in season 7, it is the actual army I'm looking at maybe transferring over to and trying out. Yeah, it's one of those armies that's always kind of intrigued me. So it'd be quite nice to kind of get to grips with the free folk. Next up, I'm just going to briefly mention the neutrals. What I took from the podcast was really Jokin's being redone, Walder is being redone, and by the looks of it, Golden Company are being redone with the War Elephants as well. Quite happy to see Golden Company being looked at, especially the swordsmen. I mean, they used to be, was it season 4 maybe? They were pretty broken back then, and then they got absolutely kind of nerfed, and there's been no happy ground since.
Yeah, I think this is a really interesting change because since I've been playing the game the last sort of 3 or 4 years, this comes up a lot when people talk about new seasons and updates to the rules and what would you like to see in those sorts of conversations. I think a Golden Company commander is often mentioned, but in general, I think people want to see that it's kind of viable to bring a Golden Company sort of themed army. That comes up a lot. So I think that's exciting, and I think that's a good example of just having Simon just having their finger on the pulse, really, at least in the sort of UK scene in terms of what people would like to see. So I'm excited. Hopefully the elephants get a bit better. They are monster adjacent, like Joe said. So yeah, optimistic about that.
Yeah, I'd like to see
neutrals
Harry
with a few
Strickland.
more options. Sorry, go on.
Sorry, mate. I was just going to say I'd like to see a Harry Strickland commander, who's the commander of the Golden Company, because it's something they've
a
missed.
Golden Company commander would make a big difference, wouldn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
But we're not going to get. Let's be honest, we're not going to get that.
Not this time.
Probably not going to get that for a long time. I think the one I'm most intrigued about is the Jakan Hakar rework. I played Jakan Hakar a fair amount over the last 18 months, and I was like, no one ever played this. I think it's not bad. But it turned out it's because I had misread the card.
Right.
So I thought it just gave any melee attack precision, but it's actually only melee infantry. So he obviously copies influences, great. But if you can't copy an influence, you can just give melee infantry precision. I was like, why is it that restrictive? Like, would it be overpowered if it just gave everyone precision? Like an influence that gives a unit precision is like still a crap influence. So I think it's really cool to copy influences. I think it's sort of, it's that sort of opportunity to be a bit different, skill ceiling stuff. But the fallback when there's no influence to copy is so bad that it's hard to justify him as he is now.
Yeah, absolutely. Brings us on to Night's Watch. Now, we have seen a little bit of a release about that with the War Machines, but apparently the baseline units are also going to be looked at, which is obviously your vets and your Swarm Brothers, like we've just said, your starter box kind of units. But also conscripts are going to be looked at as well because they're not taken as much. Do you guys know much about the Night's Watch? Have any expectations or anything like that?
Well, the sort of, I think most Night Watch players would agree that if you ask them what they would like to change about their faction, it's the tactics deck. That's what is sort of the consistent source of
Yeah.
complaints
Yeah.
from Night Watch players. So I think, yeah, I'm a little concerned about this just in terms of if you now try and balance the faction's units with its current tactics deck, which isn't great, let's be honest. How are you then going to change the tactics deck in the future and like maintain the balance, if that makes sense? So what I'm expecting is that this will be quite a light touch for the Night's Watch, and their units won't change that much because of the anticipated changes to tactics cards a bit later down the line. So like if I was a Night's Watch player, I wouldn't be getting my hopes super high, and I'd probably be looking forward to a future update when my tactics deck gets looked at.
Yeah. Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah, I would echo that actually, Tom. I had the exact same thought when I was listening, particularly to the Targaryen update he gave, where he's talking about basically buffing the infantry because the Targaryen infantry, infantry lists don't work. It's like, well, the infantry lists don't work not because the infantry are bad, but because the tactics deck supports them in no way whatsoever. So what happens if you buff all the infantry now and then fix the tactics deck in 6 months? And likewise, the cavalry, let's be honest, it's the blood riders really that are overtuned, the attachments. Well, what if he nerfs the cavalry now and then nerfs the blood riders again in 6 months? Maybe I'm not giving him enough credit. Maybe he's across this. But it struck me as the same sort of thing. It felt a bit the wrong way around.
I think just to add to that, I would give them the credit that they know what they're doing. I just think they're not going to come out and say, to be honest, Targaryens and Night's Watch aren't going to change very much. I feel like that's probably not the messaging that you want to put out there. And fair enough, I think sometimes what is the right thing to do isn't always what people will respond really well to. And I think for both those factions, the right thing to do is not make sweeping changes now and sort their tactics decks out later.
No,
And that's what I'd want, to be honest. If I was playing either, I would be hoping that my units don't change a huge amount.
Yeah. No, I mean, absolutely. I mean, that can bring us on to Targs, to be honest with you. One thing you mentioned about was that several NCUs were going to get a complete rework because of the feeling of having to jump through so many hoops to get the thing you wanted. Obviously, it's needed. Excuse me. Yeah, go on.
Well,
I'm glad we're talking
this
about
one.
this. I have opinions about this.
I have opinions about this as well. It was that one line kind of worried me a bit because it really depends what he's talking about. Because anyone that's played against me recently will not be surprised to know I'm a massive fan of Barristan Selmy and Quaith. I think they're great. I think they're quite high skill ceiling. I think they make both you and your opponent have to think a lot. They're really finicky. Quaith, particularly in inexperienced hands, is never going to get any value. And when he said, "Oh, I want NCUs that just do something straight, they just do something. They just do something. I don't want to have people have to like set them up or think about it at all. I just want it to do something." So, well, if you're talking about the I can't remember what he's called, the guy that like adds to tactics zones. There's a couple of NCUs you never see because
Pirate Pre.
Yeah, well, not Pirate Pre. I don't know what it's called.
For the House of the Undying, is that what you're thinking?
Guy. Yeah.
Oh, Zaro
This is not even the
Daxos?
name.
Yeah, you
Possibly.
mean the guy who adds an extra bonus to the zone you claim?
Yeah.
I do.
So if he's talking about that, I'm like, brilliant. I agree. It's too underwhelming for the setup.
Right.
But if he's talking about my boy Barristan or Quaith, I got issues.
No, to be fair, no, I get your point there. I mean, the units that were mentioned that they're going to, like say, combat units that they're going to look at are the Rakars, the Brazen Beasts, the Pit Fighters, and the Unsullied. Yeah, I mean, how do we kind of feel about that? I mean, obviously, as a Targaryen player, Joe, obviously, a lot of the tactics deck for Unsullied is, let's be honest, bad at best.
Yeah, well, this is the thing, isn't it? I mean, the Unsullied Swordsman and like some of the commanders, like Grey Worm and stuff, they're fantastic. You stick them in Starks or Baratheons, and you're gonna have a great time with them.
Yeah.
So it's not necessarily the Unsullied that are a problem. I think
Would it
it's
be
just that there's
worth?
no support.
Sorry, mate. Would it be worth having, for argument's sake, whether it could be made or not, having like a cavalry tactics deck and an infantry tactics deck, a bit like what you've got with the giant deck for the free folk, where so it's more keyed towards a certain thing.
I mean, the way I would personally like to change them is that the Targaryens already get one extra commander card. I'd double down on that, so half the deck is commander cards, and I'd have like the 2 Unsullied commanders would share cards. So that maybe they'd have 3 unique ones and 3 shared and 2 shared ones or something like that.
Okay.
The all the versions of Daenerys would have some shared ones and some individual ones, and I'd make it so basically half your deck changes depending on whether you're going Unsullied or Brazen Beasts or Dragons or whatever it might be.
Right.
But I don't sense that's what's going to happen. But that's personally what I would like to see.
Okay. All right. No worries. Moving on. We'll briefly glance on to the Baratheons. The notes I've taken from it really were that they're just going to keep it balanced for both sides because they didn't want to anger one side more than the other. If you would put Stannis in favour of Renly per se, but the units that looked like they were going to be changing were the Wardens, the Sentinels, the Stag Knights, and the Champions of the Stag. Obviously, Joe, I'll come to you first. With the experience you've got with Baratheons, what do you make of it?
Well, we've seen one of them, haven't we? We've seen the new Thorn Watch.
Yes.
And our resident Baratheon expert Pascal has already given his public thumbs down to it. So,
yes, I have seen that. Yes,
I do sympathise with his position. So basically, if anyone's not seen it yet, they've gone from being this kind of interesting attack and retreat and heal and a really interesting unit to a long range 7 dice sundering and precision crossbow unit. They just don't get the rerolls at short range. So, and they've gone up a point, so they're 7 points. So, are they better? Probably, and it does solve the problem in Renly's side that there's no long range unit. Are they more interesting? Absolutely not. They're much, much duller. But on the basis that, Simon aren't going to be releasing any new units anytime soon, as far as we can tell, they just got to work with what they've got. I think it's a fine change, and I think it solves a short-term problem. Longer term, I would like to see them being back that quasi-melee, quasi-range unit that they were.
Right.
I'd be interested. Sorry, Tom, go ahead.
I was just going to say, just to build on that, I think that feeds into the general point we were making earlier, which is also, for me, the 2 key takeaways from this. The first one is like, yay, there's a Season 7 update. That's great. It's good for the game. Gets people excited. And I like the approach of trying to buff the underperforming units and NCUs. And then the other side of this update for me, which is what we're talking about with the Thornwatch and with, this kind of, let's say concealed threat to simplify NCUs is, just a sort of, like a concern with things being oversimplified, like Quaithe, Barristan, Thornwatch, and I'd also just throw in Doran Martell here because he was also mentioned in the update.
He was indeed.
With this kind of like accusation that these units are complicated or maybe like too complicated, and I'm like, no way, these are like these are really fun units to play because they do something really interesting. And it's basically the set. I think there's a theme here that you don't need to simplify units to make them like viable and playable. They just need to be, buffed or nerfed slightly. But I hope that we don't go down the route of just things becoming simple in order to get picked
back and double check the wording on that Doran NCU. I was like, is he really talking about like the Water Gardens NCU? That's not complicated.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, exactly.
Exactly.
I mean, is like, to play kind of devil's advocate here, is that maybe making it simplified so maybe it introduces new people to the game, or yeah, what do you think about that?
Yeah, good question. I genuinely don't know. For me, some of these units we're talking about are some of the most fun units in the game. I think Doran Martell's a brilliant NCU. Like,
Yeah, I love him.
really
He's
enjoy
brilliant.
playing him, and it's not, it's not that complicated. I
No,
don't know. It's maybe we've played more than most, but yeah, it's cool. It's a cool playbook of things that you can do. Gives you lots to think about. The Water Gons is a very cool sort of double-edged sword that you think hard about whether he should be in your list or not. I think he's a great pick. And absolutely Quaith and Barristan the same. Like, don't get me wrong, Joe's driven me absolutely mad playing those into me. And maybe Barristan I could sort of argue for making his ability just a little bit less ambiguous for your opponent. But that's not really a Barristan problem. That's just a core rule. What targets what is there. Just a part of the rule set that has always been has always like caused debates in games about what does actually target something else. It's
Yeah, I would agree with you on that, Tom. I mean, they're both strong NCUs, and arguably the Barrister particularly could be toned down in some way. I don't know, but they are clunky, especially Quaith. Like, I had a game against Colin from the Bruces at the Welsh GT where he blanked Quaith, and I'd activated Quaith at the start of the start of the turn, and then he activated Elena and blanked him. It's like, it's such a clunky interaction. Um, but I'd be sad to lose the opportunity for that against you because of these edge cases. I mean, to what extent do you have to change? Do you just give up on complicated rules because of the edge cases, or you know, what do you do?
yeah,
Mm,
agreed.
mm.
Agreed. So
So
yeah.
yeah, kind of moving forward into the remaining factions we've got basically. Greyjoys, by the sounds of it, they're only going to get very light buffs. Balon apparently has had minor changes to tone him down slightly, with Eric Ironmaker having some tweaks, and as we've already touched on, the Black Tide Chosen being remade for the third time.
But weren't we surprised that there was no mention of the Iron Victory crew? That really surprised me. So
Well,
we had skirmishers, Cassirock Honor Guard. I think both Sand skirmishers and Cassirock Honor Guard, like and Tully Cav were like rightly mentioned as like,
Yeah.
yeah, we're mostly focused on buffing units, but like we know there are a couple that need to be just toned down slightly. Fair enough. That's like not the Iron Victory crew. That really surprised me.
I think we're going to see something happen to the Iron Victory crew, maybe an morale reduction by one or something. It's probably the strongest 6-point combat unit, infantry combat unit in the game. So I think there will be a slight toning down of it. And they didn't specifically mention it, but I think we'll see a buff to the Reavers and the Bowmen, and the Reapers as well. Like I say, the Greyjoy starter set is probably the most underwhelming currently in the game.
Yeah. Yeah, that's very true. Moving on to Martells, as we already touched on, Sand Skirmishers are looking at a potential nerf. How heavy that is, we will see. I imagine it's not going to be too heavy. But the Dark Retinue are looking at getting a buff. Doran NCUs, obviously, as we've already previously mentioned, are going to be looked at. Apparently, the Martells are going to have small tweaks to combat units. They don't need much.
Yeah, I think sorry, I
No,
am
carry on.
very excited that the Dark Star Retinue get a buff. Just to briefly go back to Greyjoy for a second, minor changes to Balon. How do we feel about that? I don't know about you guys, but I was kind of hoping we might one day see the end of Balon bringing units back on the side. I presume a minor change is going to be what? Something to do with the village
Well,
tokens. Hasn't he already
no,
had that? No.
I think it depends what he means by that. But if the minor change is that it has to respawn in your deployment zone, for example, arguably that's a major change. But it's a minor change from wording, but it would have a
Okay.
massive impact on the power level of Balon.
Or what if
Okay,
And I
it
think
yeah.
that would
said
be
it
enough,
came back with
frankly.
half its amount of wounds?
Perhaps, yeah. I like that
I,
though.
I,
I mean, if that counts as a minor change, then I'm all in. Sounds good to
yeah, I
me.
mean,
That sounds good to me.
I would say if Balon brought the unit back in Greyjoy deployment zone, Balon could go back down to 5 points as far as I'm concerned.
Okay. Yeah.
It's appearing behind you is the problem.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's another one of, it's just such a, so, I mean, we talked about Outflank already, right? But it's just such a kind of, I don't know, it's like overly dramatic. Is that the right word? Like it frustrates me when entire games pivot around this one NCU's trick. That just always seems a
Yeah.
bit full on.
Yeah.
Why did you lose that game? Oh, I lost it because Balon bought a unit in my rear and charged me. And yeah. So I'm hoping, yeah. All right, let's hope for that then. Minor change means minor change to the wording, massive impact on how it plays. I'm happy.
Yeah.
Sorry,
No,
Brad.
yeah.
Back to Martel.
No.
Dark Star Retinue.
No, well,
Very
do
exciting.
you know, I was going to say actually, you saying about it coming on in the opponent's, in the opponent's, in your own deployment zone. That's essentially the endless horde for the free folk, isn't it? Which makes it, level with them. And well, I say level with them, but like fairer. So I understand where you're coming from on that.
Yeah, or maybe your half of the board, or
Yeah.
that's for me. That's the problem with Balon. I don't necessarily have a problem with a 5-point NCU bringing back a 7-8 point unit. It's just it shouldn't appear behind you unactivated.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Fair play. Okay. Yeah. No, that's understandable.
Martel wise, I think the unit I'd most like to see receive one of these buffs would be the Spearman. I think
Yeah.
there again, starter unit box, every Martel player's got 2 units of them.
Make them a
So
4-up save.
So fragile, no keywords on the attack. It'd be good to see them get a little improvement. Yeah, that'd be cool. And Dark Star Retinue, I just think the models are so cool.
Yeah.
That unit, it's a tragedy that I think so few people have even seen that unit, let alone a painted unit of them. They're just stunning models. Yeah,
Yeah.
ninjas like
Yeah.
sprinting with massive swords behind their backs. They look fantastic. So hopefully a buff means we'll see them.
I always liked
Future
using them. I
events.
know it's a conversation you and I have had many a time, Tom. But I've always liked the retinue because they are that hard-hitting truck unit when they do get in. So it'd be interesting to see what they do in terms of buffing them. I'm quite interested to see that one. So if we move on to Boltons next, really we're looking at changes to the Spearmen and the Mummer side of things, so like your Skirmishers, your Zorse Riders. Rightly so, Walder is looking at being nerfed a little bit. Personally, I think she should be a 4-point NCU that does 1 wound rather than 2. And apparently Roos is getting a big buff. What do we think that could be?
But you're the expert on this one, Brad. I've only played against Bolton a few times. I think
we're a matter of 2 players, Brad.
Yeah, I mean, I have played against Boltons 3 times. Once against you, Brad, and twice against Chris.
Right,
I think for me, I think that's fine. I think the other glaring, overtuned element is Grunt. I think Grunt should be 1 per condition token.
Yeah.
But
Grunt won't change, though, right?
Say again, sorry.
I said Grunt won't change in this update, though.
Not that we know of. They haven't mentioned it in that talk. Yeah. But I mean, what Roos does as an NCU is he begins with 3 order tokens, and each time he activates, you can remove an order token from him, and then basically one enemy can become panicked, and then he replaces the zone with a panic test. It's nothing special.
No, I think that is an underwhelming NCU ability, especially with how good most people's morale is and how many auto plus cards there are. The only worry really is that because the commander and attachment version of Roos is so strong, how strong do you need to make the NCU to be more attractive than that? Bit of potential bit of power creep, but yeah, the NCU as is pretty underwhelming.
Yeah,
especially since Bolton is no longer really the panic faction.
Exactly. I mean, the only reason you'd ever potentially take him is because you're passing out more tokens, but he's better as an attachment than he is as an NCU now. Yeah. Which kind of brings us on to the last one, I think, with the Brotherhood. This army's going to have the smallest amount of changes, but it's kind of understandable considering they're probably the smallest faction. I think it's right in saying.
Well, and also arguably it has the most changes because you can obviously bring a unit of Stark or Baratheon. So I think it's perfectly
Yeah.
reasonable to not fiddle too much with their units because, you know, every change you make in Stark and Baratheon is going to impact Brotherhood.
Yeah, very true. Very true. I mean, Sworn Knights have always been pretty strong since inception, haven't they?
Yeah, they're
Wouldn't
great.
mind seeing them nerfed a little bit, maybe. But yeah, you know that kind of. Well, I don't think I've mentioned Lannisters, but I think we kind of mentioned that a bit earlier, didn't we? Where it's your halberdiers, that kind of thing.
Yeah, I think for Lannisters, their underpicked units would be like Gold Cloaks, the Lannisport City Watch, and perhaps the Warrior Sons would be my best guess. I think Halberdiers are actually pretty good. Maybe the Guardsmen.
Hmm.
Yeah, and obviously I think actually Lannister's probably getting nerfed the most. So Castellock, Honor Guard, sounds like they will take some sort of adjustment, which makes sense. They're ever so good, and also Tywin NCU was mentioned. So might be the faction for whom Season 7 feels the most like a nerf. Because I think yeah, unless those other units get some sort of very, very nice improvements, we'll see.
Yeah.
Well,
We'll
there's
see.
definitely scope for Guardsmen, Mountainsmen, and Brigands to be improved, isn't there? Let's be honest.
That's true, yeah. Brigands would be really good.
Yeah.
I noticed the Hedge Knights were getting a small durability improvement, which I imagine is morale 6 rather than 7. So I wonder if perhaps Brigands will also go to 6. I feel like, yeah, as the game has gone on and we've been playing it, a lot of units that were morale 7 are not anymore.
Yeah.
It's a bit rough, isn't it, being morale 7?
Yeah. It does feel like we're floating around the 5-6 area.
Yeah. But if that concludes us, I like going through the factions. So just one more thing I wanted to mention about the updates.
Absolutely.
Are we through all the factions, Brad?
Yeah. From everything I've got notes on. Let's put it that way.
Nice. Cool. Yeah, so I think the update, like by and large, very positive. Very happy that there is an update, and I like the approach, and I like the sound of the vast majority of the changes. Yeah, we've talked a little bit about not dumbing the game down, basically. The one thing about this update that did surprise me as well, though, was so season 6 obviously launched a long time ago, and it was, at least since I've been playing a game, it felt like the biggest change to the game with the introduction of the free attachment points. And I think we all felt at the time, and almost feels like this has been forgotten now, but I remember at the time, a lot of, like, depending on your faction, utilizing those 4 free points was, very different depending on the faction you played. So, like Martell, for example, the fact that you don't have a in-faction cavalry attachment really like pushes your list building away from their cavalry units, which I think was a shame. And I know Baratheons really struggle as well to like utilize the free attachment points.
Yeah.
And I think that change, adding those 4 free points, was very cool. And it's been nice to see more attachments on the table and get familiar with them. It actually introduced a load of new things that I hadn't really seen before, and brought a bit of life into the game, which I think was really good. But for me, it's always felt just a tiny bit unfinished in that I think with that change, it was necessary to make sure every faction could sort of spend the points more or less equally. So one thing I would really hope for season 7 or maybe season 8 would be just that gets addressed. And it might be as simple as dropping the number of points to 3. I think
Yeah.
if you had 3 free attachment points, given that your commander occupies one of your attachment slots, it wouldn't be so hard. I notice now switching to Lannister, the presence of 2 different attachments that go in enemy units makes it, very easy to spend your 4 free points, and also like multiple cavalry attachments. So it'd be great just to see. I hope that doesn't get lost or forgotten about. It'd be great to see, just all factions having sort of roughly equal access to spending those points, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely.
I think they might sneak that in actually, Tom. It wouldn't shock me if because I think part of the playtesting they reduced the number of free attachments, and it wouldn't shock me if they slip that in. Oh, by the way, here's all the unit reworks, and it's now 3 free attachment points or 2 free attachment points.
That would be cool. Yeah, I'd like that.
Excellent. Okay. I mean,
Fingers crossed.
to wrap things up, I'll I'll just quickly divert back to obviously what we're here for originally, which is the SGT. Yeah, we will be streaming over the course of the weekend, so I'd love to see as many of you joining us as possible. The ones that can't be there, of course. Yeah, we are actually going out on the Saturday night for a social as well, which obviously I'll be talking to the tournament players tomorrow before we start. But it'll be nice to kind of go out and the community get back together again, which it's for me personally it's been a while. So it'll be nice to see everybody. Obviously, everybody that's travelling up, down, west or east. Obviously, a safe trip tomorrow. Really look forward to seeing you all, and hopefully having a really good weekend.
Yeah, well done to the sort of 3 people that have stayed with us for our ramblings. So yeah, look forward to seeing you tomorrow, Brad and Tom, and anyone else that's still listening.
Absolutely. Yeah, as always, a pleasure having you guys on. Thank you for coming on and giving your opinions. Always welcome.
Cheers, Brad. See you tomorrow.
All right.
See you, bud.
Thanks, guys. And as I say, we'll be back tomorrow. First game is at 10 o'clock. I'll put a link up here during either the evening tonight or maybe tomorrow morning. And yeah, we'll get the Southern Grand Tournament underway. So wish us all luck. And well, I say more luck towards the players than me, of course. But yeah, we'll see who claims the crown. All right. Good evening, guys, and see you later.